Horror Chronicle Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 1, Ghosts from the Days of the Plague. There are places in the world where merely mentioning their name is enough to send shivers down the spine. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, perched on a desolate hill in Louisville, Kentucky, is one such place. Americans call it the House of Darkness, while ghost hunters regard it as the doorway between life and death. For more than a century, this place has carried the thick dust of tragedy, suffering, and whispers of restless souls that never found peace. At the beginning of the 20th century, America faced an invisible enemy, tuberculosis. People gave it a chilling name, the White Death. With no cure, no vaccine, tuberculosis spread rapidly and claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. In Kentucky, with its damp lands and heavy air, the disease became even more devastating. In 1910, authorities decided to build a separate treatment facility far away from residential areas. They chose a lonely hill on the outskirts of Louisville. The site was high and airy, believed to have fresh air, the only known therapy at the time to save patients. The first facility was just a small wooden building, enough to house about 40 patients. It was called Waverly Hills Sanatorium. No one expected that within just a few years, the number of patients would skyrocket. Horse-drawn carriages and later trucks carried loads of sick people from across the state to the hill. There, the sound of harsh coughing, the groans of men, women, and children echoed day and night. People believed that Waverly Hill had become the holy ground of death. By 1926, a massive 5-story concrete building rose, replacing the old wooden structure. It was the most modern medical facility in the United States at that time. Its capacity, over 400 patients. But within just a few months, that number was quickly exceeded. Every day, Waverly received dozens of new patients, yet dozens of corpses were carried out. People no longer called it a hospital, but rather a machine that swallowed lives. The endless corridors and cold white rooms became witnesses to tens of thousands of deaths. Unofficial statistics claim that over 63,000 people died at Waverly during its years of operation. While this figure is still debated, one thing is certain. This was one of the largest living graveyards in America. One of the most haunting mysteries was the body chute, what investigators later called the death tunnel. It was a long, sloping tunnel connecting the hospital basement to the forest behind. At first, it was built to transport medical supplies, but soon its real function became to carry out the dead. Every day, people said that when you stood inside that tunnel, you could hear the squeak of gurney wheels, the clang of metal against the walls, and even muffled sobs from the darkness. Those who dared sneak in swore they felt hundreds of invisible eyes watching them. Years after the hospital closed, journalists interviewed former nurses and doctors. Some admitted to having witnessed things they could not explain. One nurse recounted, "I was on the night shift when a patient had just died. I clearly remember pulling the sheet over his face. But when I turned back, the sheet had been pulled down, and I saw his eyes wide open, staring straight at me. I screamed and ran away, but when I returned, the body lay still as if it had never moved." A former doctor confessed that many nights he heard people calling his name in the empty corridors, but when he turned around, no one was there. Once I even saw the figure of a child holding a ball run past a doorway, but in that section, no child patients had survived. Gradually, Waverly Hills was no longer just a place of illness and death, but a symbol of terror. The people of Louisville whispered, "Anyone who dies at Waverly will never rest in peace." The shadows at the end of the corridors, the cries in the night, the doors slamming shut on their own, All of it turned this place into one of the most haunted hospitals in America. Horror Chronicles, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 2, The Soul-Devouring Machine. In the 1930s, Waverly Hills Sanatorium officially became the largest tuberculosis hospital in the state of Kentucky, with a capacity of over 400 beds. Every room was filled with patients. But the heartbreaking truth was this: only a small fraction of them had any chance of survival. In the endless corridors, hundreds of people lay huddled, coughing violently. The dominant sounds were coughing fits, wheezing breaths, and cries of desperation. Children and adults shared the same ward. Some children, as young as 5 years old, were forced to live in isolation, separated from their parents, only able to look at them through a foggy glass pane. Every morning, stretchers quietly rolled down the corridor, carrying corpses out of the wards. The living patients turned their faces away, unwilling to watch. They knew that tomorrow the stretcher might be for them. One patient once recorded in a diary, "I have been lying here for 6 months. Every day, someone disappears. We don't ask, because we all know the answer. The smell of disinfectant, of blood, and even the stench of death blend together, stabbing straight into our noses. At times, I thought I was living in a cemetery rather than a hospital." At that time, medicine had no antibiotics to treat tuberculosis. The doctors at Waverly applied methods that today make people shudder. Open-air lung therapy. Patients were taken out to the balcony, forced to lie still in the freezing winter, with the belief that fresh air would kill the bacteria. Many died of cold before tuberculosis killed them. Thoracic surgery. Doctors cut away ribs, even removed a lung to help patients breathe easier. Very few survive such procedures. Artificial pneumothorax. They used enormous syringes to pump air or liquid into the lungs to crush the TB bacteria. The result? Many died in unbearable agony. Absolute isolation. Those in severe condition were locked away in dark rooms, forbidden contact with their families. They died alone, with no one to witness it. A nurse once admitted, "Often, I felt like we weren't treating illnesses, but experimenting on our patients. They screamed, they begged, but we were powerless. The failed surgeries haunted me for the rest of my life." Among thousands of stories, room 502 was the most infamous. In 1928, a nurse was found hanging in that room. It was said she had become pregnant out of wedlock and could not bear the pressure. But later, investigative groups confirmed they had heard a woman's voice whispering inside the empty room. And on multiple occasions, cameras recorded strange streaks of light. One special feature of Waverly was its corridors. These passageways stretched for tens of meters, with high ceilings and dim yellow light from electric bulbs. By day, they already felt cold and unsettling. At night, they became a labyrinth. Witnesses reported sometimes hearing footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find no one there. Some saw dark figures standing at the end of the hallway, staring silently, without moving closer. A doctor once confessed that he always felt someone following me during his night shifts. Some survivors claimed they often saw the dead gliding past their beds. At first, they thought it was fever-induced hallucinations, but strangely, many others described the exact same vision. a pale white silhouette standing by the bed, staring down at them with empty eyes. Waverly Hills operated tirelessly, day and night. Yet nights here were even more terrifying than days. Wind howled through broken windows, light bulbs flickered, and the sound of coughing echoed endlessly. Nurses on night duty often said they heard sounds that defied explanation. The giggles of children, though no child patients remained in that area. The screech of metal gurneys scraping across the floor, though all gurneys had already been stored away. And the most chilling of all, voices calling their names from the dark corners of the corridor. Many could not endure the psychological torment and resigned. Some later admitted they still dreamed of the hospital doors swinging open, and from within, dozens of emaciated patients shuffled out, holding out their bony hands toward them. Horror Chronicle, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 3. Nameless Tragedies. Among the tens of thousands of patients who came to Waverly Hills, many were children. People believed that separating them from the community would prevent the disease from spreading. But that also meant many children spent their final years without parents, without anyone close by their side. A former nurse recalled, "There was a little girl, about 7 years old, who always carried a worn cloth doll. She coughed constantly, but every time I came, she would smile and ask, 'Will I get to go home?' I never dared to answer. One morning, she wasn't breathing anymore. The doll lay right beside her, its glass eyes staring at me, as if blaming me." Years later, locals still whispered about it. During tours of the abandoned hospital, some claimed they heard children's laughter echoing through the third-floor hallway. Once, a film crew captured footage of a ball rolling across the camera view, though the area was completely empty. Investigators believed it was a sign of the lingering spirits of children who never left this place. The story of Room 502 had been told, but its tragedy went deeper. The nurse from long ago, her name was Mary Lee, was recorded in the hospital's logbook. Mary's death shocked the entire staff. She was found hanging, still in her white uniform, her face pale and lifeless, but her eyes wide open, as if trying to tell something left unsaid. 2 years later, another nurse, believed to be Mary's close friend, fell from the balcony of that very room. Police ruled it a suicide, but many believe that an invisible hand had pushed her down. In recent years, visitors claim they saw the shadow of a woman in white, her hair hanging loose, standing at the window of room 502. But when they approached, the image dissolved into nothingness, leaving only an unbearable chill. One of the most chilling phenomena reported was the appearance of a tall, faceless figure. Witnesses said they saw him wandering in the basement hallways, sometimes standing motionless at the end of the corridor, as if observing. A ghost hunting team in 2002 captured video footage of a pitch-black figure blocking a doorway, but when they approached, no one was there. One member of the team later suffered nightmares for months. In his dreams, the faceless figure kept advancing, reaching out with an icy hand that touched his throat. People believe this may have been the spirit of a patient who died in such agony that he lost even his own identity. Not only patients, but even nurses, the very ones dedicated to the hospital, became victims. Beyond the tragedies of Room 502, a doctor once wrote in his journal, "I witnessed my colleague, Helen, coughing up blood right as she was giving an injection to a patient. We rushed her to the restroom, but just a few hours later, she passed away. That night, I swear I still saw Helen's shadow walking down the hallway, carrying a tray of medicine as usual. Many witnesses claim to have seen the silhouette of nurses in white uniforms patrolling the abandoned hospital. But as they drew closer, the figure would vanish, leaving behind only a pungent smell of disinfectant. Since Waverly Hills shut down in the 1980s, countless ghost hunting groups, journalists, and documentary filmmakers have come here. They brought cameras, recorders, temperature sensors, and more than once captured inexplicable evidence. EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Multiple recordings captured whispers of "help me" or sounds of crying. Sudden temperature drops. In empty corridors, the temperature could plunge by 10 degrees within seconds. Shadow figures. Cameras repeatedly caught fleeting shapes resembling people moving. One reporter wrote, "We followed a leather ball rolling down the hallway. Suddenly it stopped, then bounced up as if someone had just kicked it. But our entire group was standing several meters away. When we shined our flashlights, a child's voice rang out clearly. 'Play with me.'" For the people of Louisville, Waverly Hills remains an unhealed wound. The older generations told their children about relatives who died there, about the sound of hearses rumbling down the death tunnel every night. An old man who lived near the hospital said in an interview, "When I was little, every night I would hear sirens, then see lights from the tunnel. Adults said it was trucks carrying supplies, but we all knew it was the hearses. I swear there were nights I saw rows of white figures walking into the forest. When I blinked, they were all gone." Horror Chronicle, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 4. After the door closed. In 1961, after the discovery of the antibiotic streptomycin and the gradual control of tuberculosis, Waverly Hills closed its doors as a sanatorium. But instead of disappearing from memory, the place was repurposed into a nursing home. However, throughout the 1960s and 1980s, reports of harsh living conditions, neglect, and even abuse of the elderly began to spread. Some former staff admitted the facility lacked funding, the wards were overcrowded, and many elderly patients were not properly cared for. In 1982, Waverly Hills officially shut down completely. The massive building stood alone on the hill, silent but far from peaceful. Locals in Louisville whispered. Every night, eerie lights appeared in the darkened windows, and moans echoed from the woods. By the late 1980s, an investor purchased Waverly Hills with plans to convert it into a state-of-the-art prison. The plan quickly faced strong opposition from local residents who were already weary of the shadow of death tied to the hospital. They did not want the Hill of Death to become a place for criminals. The project was canceled. Waverly Hills continued to decay, walls peeling, roof leaking, becoming a gathering spot for thrill seekers, reckless teenagers, and even occult groups performing rituals. Many believe that it was during this period the curse of Waverly grew stronger, as the spirits of the dead were now disturbed even more by the living. By the 1990s, ghost hunting had become increasingly popular in America. Waverly Hills quickly became a golden target for paranormal investigators. 1999, a group of college students snuck inside and claimed they saw a figure dart across the staircase. When they reviewed their VHS tape, a faint image appeared, resembling a patient in a hospital gown. 2001, a documentary crew captured an EVP recording a female voice whispering, "Don't leave me." The sound engineer confirmed the tape had not been altered. 2002, the TV show Scariest Places on Earth aired footage of Waverly Hills, catapulting the site into global fame. Since then, hundreds of investigation teams have visited Waverly. Many fled in panic, swearing they were followed by a shadowy figure even after leaving the hospital. During the period when controlled tours were introduced, the new management of Waverly Hills documented numerous eerie phenomena. the haunted staircase, visitors often felt invisible hands tugging at their legs while descending to the basement. Slamming doors. Heavy doors weighing dozens of kilos slammed shut on their own, even in the absence of wind or uneven floors. Moaning sounds, the echoes of patients coughing up blood reverberated through the corridors. White figures darting by. Some described it as though people were still desperately fleeing doctors, disease, and death itself.
A female journalist once wrote, "When we stepped into the basement, I clearly saw a figure walk across. I thought it was my colleague, but when I chased after it, the hallway was empty. A freezing chill wrapped around me, and I heard a whisper in my ear, 'Go back.'" One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Waverly Hills is the appearance of shadow people. They usually manifest as pitch-black human figures, faceless, either standing still or darting unnaturally fast across hallways. Visitors recounted a towering shadow, more than 2 meters tall, standing at the end of a corridor, staring. A small figure, like a child, running and hiding behind a door. Some even felt a hand tap their shoulder, though no one was behind them. The phenomenon of shadow people became so common that many believe these are not simply restless spirits, but something else entirely. Parasitic supernatural entities feeding on the immense suffering embedded in this place. In the early 2000s, Waverly Hills was purchased by Charlie and Tina Mattingly, a couple determined to restore and preserve the site. They transformed it into a haunted attraction, offering nighttime tours, Halloween events, and even paranormal investigations for visitors. Every year, thousands flock to the site, seeking both history and horror. Some see it as disrespectful to the dead, while others believe that telling the stories ensures the departed are not forgotten. One visitor shared, "I came here seeking thrills, but in the end I only felt sadness. When I entered the room filled with rusty iron beds, I imagined dozens of people lying there, coughing up blood, waiting to die." The fear didn't come from ghosts. It came from the truth of how much people suffered here. Horror Chronicle, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 5, The Ghosts in the Modern Era. After being purchased by Charlie and Tina Mattingly in 2001, Waverly Hills was not only preserved, but also transformed into one of the most famous haunted tourist destinations in the world. Today, instead of being just a decaying building on a hill, Waverly has become a horror tourism hotspot, night tours and ghost hunts lasting from 2 to 8 hours. The largest Halloween event in Kentucky, each year attracting thousands of visitors. A pop culture destination, appearing in numerous documentaries, television shows, and even video games. People come to Waverly not only to hunt for ghosts, but also to witness with their own eyes a bloody historical legacy. Over the past 2 decades, Waverly Hills has featured in countless shows. Ghost Hunters, 2005, the teen captured footage of a white figure moving along the hallway, considered one of the most convincing pieces of ghostly evidence. Most Haunted UK, the crew recorded the sound of screaming in the basement. Ghost Adventures, 2009, Zach Bagans and his team had chilling encounters with shadow people and constant knocking on the walls. Documentary film Death Tunnel, 2005, inspired by Waverly's infamous Death Tunnel. Thanks to these appearances, Waverly Hills was ranked among the top supernatural hotspots, alongside the Winchester House, California, the Stanley Hotel, Colorado, and Eastern State Penitentiary, Pennsylvania. Even after decades, the supernatural phenomena at Waverly have not diminished. Modern visitors often recount their experiences with chilling similarities. A group of young people on a night tour in 2015 claimed to see a boy rolling a ball on the 4th floor. When they replayed the video, the ball moved in an unnatural way, changing direction even though no one touched it. In 2017, a photographer took a long exposure shot in a dark hallway. When the photo was developed, a figure in a white lab coat appeared by the window, yet no one in his group wore such clothing. In 2021, a woman on a tour fainted after hearing a whisper right in her ear. "I can't breathe." When she regained consciousness, she described the sensation of an invisible chest pressing down on her. These stories spread widely across social media, further amplifying Waverly's chilling reputation. There are many reasons why Waverly Hills is called the most haunted hospital in the world. A tragic history, thousands of lives lost to disease, many of them young, even children. Architectural design, endless corridors, desolate patient rooms, spiral staircases, and the death tunnel, all contributing to the suffocating atmosphere. Oral accounts, from locals, tourists, and ghost hunting teams, each adding new layers to the mystery. Belief in residual energy. Spiritualists claim that the pain and death have seeped into every brick, turning Waverly into a hub of negative energy. Today, Waverly Hills is not just a tourist attraction, but a symbol of a bloody past. Many come to test their courage, while others come to mourn and remember. In an interview, Tina Mattingly once said, "We don't want Waverly to be remembered only as a haunted house. We want people to understand that thousands once lived and died here. Those souls deserve respect." Thus, Waverly Hills is not merely a spine-chilling destination. It is a testimony to suffering, and at the same time, a dimly lit gateway between the world of the living and the dead. Horror Chronicle, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Part 6. Conclusion: Between Truth and Legend. Waverly Hills is not the only hospital that once witnessed mass death. But why has this place become the monument of America's ghost stories? Perhaps because here all the elements converge. A tragic history with thousands of lives buried. A gluey architecture that makes you shiver the moment you step inside. Folklore stories told and retold for decades. And finally, the presence of mass media that carried the name Waverly across the world. When combined, all of this forms a living horror legend where the boundary between painful memory and supernatural apparitions becomes blurred. This is the eternal question every investigation team carries when stepping into Waverly Hills. Some believe that the shadows, the screams, the rolling ball, or the invisible hands touching them are truly the souls of the dead who have not yet found peace. Some insist it is nothing more than mass hallucination, born of the heavy atmosphere, the strange acoustics in the hallways, and panic-stricken psychology. Some scientists say that abnormal magnetic fields, infrasound resonance, and mold could cause feelings of being watched or struggling to breathe. What is the truth? Until today, no one has a definitive answer. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, people cannot deny one thing. Waverly Hills is the living graveyard of thousands of souls. Every room, every hallway, every window once bore witness to tears, pain, and death. The cries, the prayers, the footsteps of doctors, nurses, and patients all seem to still echo through the old bricks. This is what makes Waverly different. It is not just an abandoned building, but a historical witness, where humanity once confronted the fragility of life and where supernatural mysteries are forever nurtured. If we see Waverly only as a haunted house, we miss its greater meaning. It reminds us that epidemics can devastate an entire community. The suffering of patients, the sacrifices of doctors and nurses cannot be forgotten. History, no matter how terrifying, must still be told so that future generations may understand and respect it. In a certain sense, the ghosts of Waverly are not merely wandering spirits, but collective memory. A memory that continues to haunt as a reminder of the fragility of humans before disease and death. Today, thousands of people still come to Waverly Hills each year to challenge themselves, to seek the unknown, or simply to walk the haunted hallway once in. Final words. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is not just an abandoned building in Kentucky. It is a place where history and legend merge into one. It is evidence of humanity's past losses, and at the same time, a misty veil that leads us to the eternal questions about the existence of the afterlife. And perhaps, as long as people continue to step into it in the dark of night, the ghosts of Waverly will never truly die. Not in the hallways, but in the hearts and fears of every human being.